Just moving around. Yeah. That's so crazy.
That's genius. It's pulled up on YouTube. I started looking up, trying to find videos of black people using Ouija boards. Can't find them. If you can find one, please let me know, because I ain't seeing them. So this one, it's going to be about giants. I find giants to be very believable because it's just one of those things where if you believe in the Bible or you don't, it still could go either way, because you have the Bible, which speaks of giants, right? You have like David versus Goliath, you know, giants were talked about in Genesis. The Nephilim, right? So it's fallen angels that came down and mated with human beings, right? Which created the Nephilim. Then if you don't believe in any of that stuff, what about like Easter Island? So Easter Island has these giant stone statues, right? I find things might be easier, all of these structures that we have around the world, that we don't know how they got built. What if giants were part of that? Like, so people talk about how dragging giant stones across the desert when you build the pyramids, it's impossible, and they try to piece it together, right? They try to replicate the process and how it's done. But what if we account for giants now?
Yeah.
Can that change? And what drastically would that change? Be like, okay, if giants were there and had this strength and they were this tall, maybe we can account for all of these structures that are around the world that we don't understand how the stone was moved. You know what I'm saying? So, but it also makes me wonder, why haven't I heard a whole lot about it if that's true? Giants, anyways, right? So we find like dinosaur bones. And
that's believed?
That's believed, right? We find other bones. And I find this funny because a lot of people say that the Smithsonian hides things, like the Vatican, right? So the Vatican supposedly hides a lot of books and a lot of our history, supposedly.
That's believable.
The Smithsonian is doing more research into it. It's an organization of a bunch of different entities, right? They're trying to preserve history, right? Okay. But I wanted to read from their website. This is what they say the Smithsonian is. The Smithsonian is a group of museums, education, and research centers, the largest such complex in the world, created by the U.S. government for the increase and diffusion of knowledge. That's what they have on their website, right?
Diffusion of knowledge.
So what if you can infiltrate this organization or bully the people in this organization and say that, hey, you're going to put this shit out.
Yeah.
I don't care what you think. I don't care what your background is. You're doing what we fucking tell you to do. Yeah. So now you have this, more people are going to believe in more people coming together as a group to try to diffuse this knowledge around about stuff. But if I find giant bones, the Smithsonian comes in and looks at it and like, nah, not bones, but we'll take over the site, blah, blah, blah. And they destroy everything.
Stupid ass.
I mean, maybe that's possible. I don't fucking know. But I think it gets really sketchy when you create something that's a government entity that's supposed to preserve and diffuse knowledge.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I just hope that that's something that's not abused, because if it is, then things like this are gonna be hidden. Like this guy that I like, his name is Mudfield University. That's his channel, right?
Yeah.
So he proposes an interesting concept. When we look at statues that are of giants around the world, it's possible that the ones that we supposedly didn't build, but the ones that we find, they're encased in stone,
Feldspar?
Right? What does it call it? Feldspar, right? And feldspar is actually sand. And the way that he's saying that this works is that the silicone in your skin mixes with oxygen, which is feldspar, and feldspar, which is sand, can go into the mudstone phase, which will then go into the limestone phase through the process
of necrophilic substitution.
And it makes it look like a statue.
Yeah.
So if that's possible, this guy is claiming that he took DNA samples of it as well, and he submitted it to a lab, which proved that it was humanoid in a sense. Human lung, and if those things are true, this is something that's super ancient. It has to be, and I don't know. It's possible that it could exist the way that this guy is saying that it could exist.
Yeah, like the Great Flood, which was said in the Bible and also in other religions as well, and not even in religions as well. Like, just people such as Native Americans, they speak about the Great Flood as well, and they're not associated with the Christianity until Christopher Columbus came and told them about it, and then they believe like, okay, Jesus is God for everyone. It's not just he's this God.
Sure.
Okay, but the Great Flood is what is getting these people thinking like the giants have been cast into the stone, because the amount of salt in the water from the Great Flood, it went and infiltrated into our system, or the giant system, whatever, any animal. It substituted the carbon and oxygen for that to create the feldspar. And then I don't know, it's just interesting, a theory like that.
Yeah. These we have a lot of stories about, like, David and Goliath.
There we go.
A lot of weird. I don't know. There's a lot of weird, like, folklore, like I talked about before in earlier episodes, that when we talk about like dragons and leprechauns and other weird shit like that, it all comes from some like stories, right? Yeah. But some of them could be obviously made up.
Yeah.
But some of them could have actual shit behind it. And I have seen giant bones before, and to who proves it and who doesn't prove it. Yeah. And could that stuff be faked? And I asked you, or I ask anyone, that if you're a believer or a non-believer, either way, could this stuff be faked? Could it be faked, for one, that there are giants? And could it be faked, or not faked, I guess, could they also hide giants as well as fake giants? Could both of those work in the same sense? Because I feel like people could... I feel like a lot of people say that it's not possible for all of these people to be... like all of these like archaeologists to be like paid off.
Yeah.
But when you go through university, it's like you're being taught something through that university, and then once you finish that university and you get your whatever it is, you're basically signed off as you're going to represent the university in a way where all the information that you share is what is kind of like what we back type of thing. And that gets kind of fuzzy, because if Harvard doesn't believe that giants exist, that will kind of fuck up my project if I'm trying to do research on it, because I'm not going to get funded for it.
Yeah.
Who wants to fund something like that? And a lot of people will be ridiculed in their field
and even lose credibility.
Right? So if you're in a field for a long time, and then you come out and say, "Wow, this thing actually could be possible," now everyone is going to ridicule you. And that's why a lot of people don't speak up. And that's why people keep saying about aliens and all these other things, like what people will come out and say. It's like, no, they wouldn't. They'd be scared to be ridiculed about it and get kicked out of their field.
It's like a secret society, you're being held to a standard, keep your mouth shut, or we'll shut it for you. Okay, so going back to how you were talking about the folklore and stuff like that. So I was talking to my research team, and they were saying, just like stories were exaggerated back then, like, so for instance, you would see a giant person, so maybe he's 8 feet, which I think is highly probable. It's not out of ordinary. There is an 8-foot man to this day,
right?
But back then you're like 5'4", and that's the average height in like 1700s through 1900s. Okay. So you see this 8-foot man, and then you say, like, holy shit, this guy is tall as the mountains, But you're looking at him from an angle. You see the mountain behind him.
Yeah.
And then you're just, what is it? Shit, it starts with the S. Anyways, you see him lining up with the mountain ridge. So you're like, he's as tall as a mountain. but it's from the angle that you see him, and then his head is like right there next to the mountain. So that.
Are you saying that if they took the video from the floor, right? Yeah. And they shot it up towards the mountain, it would make it look like he's giant?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep. Even if he is 8 feet, which is a giant to me personally, but that puts it on another scale. That's the word right there. Scale. Yeah, because you could be farther from something and think like shit, like
yeah,
or it's a smaller, So
I want to touch on something you said there, and I'm gonna ignore the fact that you said you have a research team.
Yeah.
But 8 feet tall. I think that
your team too.
If you have 8 feet tall people, right?
Yeah.
And you call them giants. I don't think that that's it. I think it's way bigger than that because I feel that we have anomalies in our civilization, right? Where you have that 6 foot and then you have that 8 foot and then you have this, it goes back. It varies.
Yeah.
But we just call them bigger people. You know what I mean? And we just recognize them. We recognize them as normal, but just bigger.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is emphasizing, the Bible emphasizes giants as in massive.
Massive, yeah.
And massive to me would be probably starting 15, and then go from there. But I think that these guys knew what was big and they had a good reference of scale.
I know, but the freaking about the witches, they didn't know none of that shit. They were like, oh hell no, we're getting rid of her. And then you see this guy who's abnormally huge.
Yeah.
And maybe he's the first in the town or the village that you've seen is this freaking huge, and you're like, all right, nah, that guy, he's an outcast. So then the outcast go with the outcast. Any big people, they link up together, they lack education, and then that's where they become,
just big dumb idiots running around.
Big dumb idiots.
I don't think so. What about this way? Think about it this way. You have this big giant guy.
Yeah.
I think you got that small, smart guy that's just I get my ass beat all the time. This guy's now my muscle. He's going to go with me, and he's going to fuck shit up.
Yeah, exactly. That's something me and my group tapped on, too.
There'd be a lot of that,
funny as hell.
I think, 100%.
Yeah, he comes and he's taking care of your issues. If not, if somebody's messing with you, you, send him to set it straight.
Oh, yeah.
Just like today, they do that. They get the big muscle to go and, handle that problem.
Yeah, they definitely would. But I don't know, when you look at stuff like Easter Island, I still don't. I've seen people make theories on the pyramid, which I think they're credible. This guy basically does it. He actually moves a lot of stone by himself, and the way he does it is he kind of builds this little pulley system type of thing where the way it works. It's almost it's like a seesaw type of way he does it, where somehow he can still do it himself through a bunch of different seesaws. But then someone also proposed a little canal where you can float the stone, and I'm like, none of that shit just seems because then you still have to pick up the stone and get it up somewhere.
Yeah.
So maybe giants could be an answer to some of this stuff out there.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some of the excuse of why they're able to build these structures and put the stone, grab the stone from so far away and bring it over here.
And you think they're building it for themselves or for some a smaller person? They're telling them hey man, put this here, or do you think they're doing it for them? What is the point in that structure being built?
I would imagine that they would live a somewhat normal. They'd have an idea of what a normal life was. So here's the thing: if they're Nephilim, so a fallen angel supposedly came down. If we were going to believe that side of the story, came down and mated with other people,
unconsensually.
I think there's probably both. I would assume. Both. It's interesting because what with that giant being bored, wouldn't it just be like a normal child, thinking wise, right? Until it gets tall and hey, I'm way too taller than everybody else. I don't know what the fuck's going on here. But he would probably want to lead a normal life, I would think. So I think that most of these guys were leading normal lives. When you look at David versus Goliath, that guy, Goliath, was part of the army, I believe, that was trying to sack a town. And I started thinking about how I've always thought about the David Goliath story as how the fuck did he kill this guy with a slingshot? But then I started thinking, what if the guy took a rock and you sharpened it a bunch of different ways, right? And then when you sling it at him, the pointy end of that rock stabs right in dead center of his fucking skull. And then he's instantly dead. Because, like, that's what the story goes. He takes a slingshot and one-shots him right in the forehead. And it's over.
Yeah.
So, to make that story a little bit more believable for me, if these guys are 15 feet tall or higher, that's what I think would happen.
Yeah.
And going back to, again, what I said about, like, leprechauns and Bigfoot and stuff like that, there's still, I don't see any stories or ever heard any folklore about giants helping people.
Yeah.
I mean, so are they evil as well?
Well, that is a story told by many cultures as well. I know I brought up the Native Americans, and that's how they tell it as well. Specifically, a tribe that was, they were the tribe that Columbus came upon when he first arrived in the U.S. And they tell the story that the giants were redheaded, and they were evil, sadistic, and they were just like they were raping women, dude. Like,
I've heard about the redhead giants a lot, not just from.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of that from people that believe in giants. For some reason, a lot of people that believe in giants, just random people that I meet, they somehow always talk about the red-haired giants, and I'm like, where is that coming from?
Yeah.
I haven't read anything ever to link that to anything, so I don't know why people keep talking about red-haired giants or where they abide from. I don't know if that somehow goes into Sasquatch, but I mean, you gotta imagine, what is a Sasquatch? Probably like 8 feet.
Yeah, there's since we're talking about giants, there's this gorilla. I forgot the correct term for it, but the gorilla went extinct, I think, 10,000 years ago, and the gorilla was actually 10 feet tall, like on its hind legs. So, like, these were just, that's how they roamed. They were just 10 feet tall. So if they can be 10 feet tall, you know, and then somehow die out, I just feel like the same might have went for us. If we're going on believing that dinosaurs were freaking 20 feet tall, you know, gorillas are 10 feet tall, woolly mammoths, 15 feet, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, now really fast, because I don't want to not get the chance to say this about Stonehenge. So there's theories of, like, wizards actually having this structure created. And I feel like the giant is actually more believable than a wizard having this structure created and teleported to a whole other country as well. And I don't know specifically what country to what country, but this is a belief that they created the Stonehenge structures, and then they transported it just like a teleportation thing straight to this, was it
on
Easter
Earth
Island?
somewhere, or on Easter Island.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, a wizard or a giant, I don't know.
Well, I would assume it'd be a wizard, right? Because I don't know. There's probably a belief that all giants are stupid as hell.
Yeah, the story is that the wizard did it, but I just personally, I think I'd believe a giant
carried it.
Yeah. I mean,
well, another thing too is that what about the fact that sea levels are different? So, what I liked hearing about stuff that I listen to about, like, the History Channel's take on things is that we have underwater civilizations, right? We have buildings down there which have massive stone structures, just like the stuff on Easter Island,
and
right?
There's other Stonehenges as well across the world.
We find that shit all the way underwater. And what's being reported is that at that time, the water level, you know, is, if you're going to believe the popular opinion, they shouldn't have been able to do that because the water level, you know, how are they going to build stuff like that underwater? Do they have diving suits to go down there and do it? Yeah. So that makes me believe that we don't know exactly what the water levels were like, or maybe the elevation. Maybe the elevation was a little bit different than what we thought it was, because they can't account for the fact that those things were built at a time where the water level would have put it underground or underwater. So I find that interesting too.
Yeah. Do you think that oh shit, damn it, I lost my train of thought.
It's all good. But I think that's pretty much all I got about that for now. But I want people to kind of check out this guy's website, Mudfill University, because I don't promote a lot of shows like other people's shows because I'm trying to promote ours, but I really like what this guy's doing. He's been around for 5 years, and I find it interesting that he took some of these samples of when we're talking about how you have this casing, right, of a statue which actually could be an actual giant.
Yeah.
And he took those samples and he sent them off to a laboratory and got results back. I want to do that shit. Like, I want other people to do that shit. Like, if you don't believe in any of this stuff, try it. See what happens. Yeah. Like, I would love to get like some kind of sample or do something to find out if any of that stuff is true. But I think his channel is very fascinating. The way he gets down and breaks down the way that it gets into limestone, and that's how, if we're somehow encased in something and got old, we'd be limestone statues as well. But that shit is trippy to me, because that shit is everywhere. We see all kinds of evidence of all these little statues everywhere, or big statues.
And they're damn near perfect. You know, it's hard to carve something out of a mountain.
Yeah.
You know, but these structures are on the mountain, and they look exactly how the mountain looks.
Do you believe in Titans?
That's the giants, right?
Not see that. I think they're two different things. See,
I was trying to look up and differentiate it, but they were saying that the giants were under the volcanoes and under earthquakes and shit like that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, so is that the Titans?
I think Titan is more Greek mythology, but the reason I found this out was, I wanted to research giants was because of, apparently there's this mountain in Alaska called Sleeping Lady, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that was the one I showed you where the lady is apparently sleeping in the mountains, but it looks like if that's, real, that would be what's considered a Titan. Yeah. Titan are just immensely huge, like, beings or creatures, whatever the fuck it is. But the guy that drew the picture supposedly said he didn't have any kind of insight. He didn't have any kind of insight into what that is, and a lot of people around the world say that structure, the Sleeping Lady, resembles a lot of things, other mountains, where they are seeing things that appear to be giants. There's a lot of other things around the world named, Sleeping Giant Hill or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah.
You see stuff like that all over, and it's like, where are they getting these names from? Yeah. What are they like? Are they just making it up because it's like, oh, I see an outline of a giant, so I'm just gonna make this shit up? It was like, but what if I don't know. It's just funny. And one other thing I want to cover is that a lot of people like to say that people want this to be real, just so that it's like it gives you like a fantasy that you want to believe in. But at the same time, it's like, I don't care about this stuff. My world was fine without this stuff. I find it more fascinating that I can believe in this, but I play devil's advocate on whether it could be true or it couldn't be true.
Yeah.
I love the idea that why aren't people talking about what if it is true? No one really wants to touch on that.
What's it called? So really fast, there is a cave in Nevada. It goes by Lovelock Cave, and this is where they believe that the last red-haired giants of Nevada went, and that's where they were actually burned to death.
So all the giants, they rounded them up and
put them into this cave, and they that was the last known place that the giants were in Nevada. And this was actually covered on the news, and it's still up. It's Channel 8 News Now, Las Vegas, and it was covered 3 years ago. And I just feel like it's interesting that the news station actually went through with covering this because they know that they'll get backlash. But the thing is, so many natives of that place, they agree with it. They all know the story. They all believe in the story because it's been told by everybody. They're like, look, man, you could either believe it or you don't believe it. And that's just it. But for the most part, the town is all in agreement that something happened right there.
Sure.
And I just feel like that's interesting because the news went through with it.
Yeah.
Knowing damn well they could be canceled.
Or they could, just not canceled, but they fact checked or like, hey, this is a stupid story. Why'd you guys put it out? Type of thing. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I mean, a lot of questions. I mean, like, are those stories being passed down between the elders of the villages, or, if it's not a village, a city, what else, what are the kind of stories, what are the truths of the stories? Maybe there's just like, the stories aren't 100%, but there's many truths to everything. So that's all I got for y'all. What do you got, man?
That's it, man. I enjoyed this show. Hopefully we could talk about this more on another day.
I think we definitely have the part 2 to this, because there's a lot more information that I want to research just based on this. This guy has like 500 videos about this stuff, and it's very unorthodox the way he presents it. So I really want to take more time to look at that before I go back into another segment. But yeah, I definitely want to do a part 2.
Absolutely. I'm down.
All right, y'all. It's Day.
And Sham, thank you so much for viewing. Like, subscribe, and comment. It's your favorite part of the video.
Peace.